Hello, everyone. Welcome back to StarSound Speaks. This is your host, Irliana Samsara, and I am joined, as I promised, Erin Reese is back. Hello, Erin. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello, everybody.
I'm so glad you're here. This is going to be a great episode, you guys. We have a wonderful episode planned. We're going to be talking about, as a starter, this upcoming full moon in Sagittarius. However, as fate would have it, I'm getting chills because I feel she's here. And who is she? I know I'm not just talking about Erin, but Tina Turner. This is going to be a homage to Tina Turner because she had a very similar chart with her. She was born on a full moon, and there's a resonance here, and I think there's lessons here that we want to share, insights that we got, and I think it's really going to empower your life. Wonderful stories about facing our fears, finding our truth, facing our fears, and the courage to face our fears. So buckle up, we're going to take a wild ride. All right. So for those of you who don't know Erin, Erin is an astrologer and an author. She's written a trilogy of books, Bindi Girl 1, Bindi Girl 2, Surrendering to, I have it here, I love this book, Surrendering to the Soul of India. There she is. And also the Truth Seeker, Stories of Love, Liberation, and Loss, all of which are on Amazon. I'll leave the link below for you. And she's also a writer on Substack. Yeah, oh, where's that book? Can you hold that up again? Yeah, there it is, Truth Seeker. Yes. So umpteen, I think you've stopped counting how many times you've been to India, right?
Yes.
It's like stuff.
Yes, I have no idea at this point. I know that I've combined all the time, and it's turned out to be something like over 5 years duration spent there. So
Wow.
it's been
All right. Oh
quite a
my
lot of
God.
time. Yes.
A lot of time. So I figure who better, right? For the full moon in Sag, right? We call Erin. We call you in. All right. So let's move into this. So maybe I should put up the chart for the month of
Yes.
for the full moon. Okay, let me grab this, share my screen here. Here it is for the city of Washington, D.C. And yeah, it's happening for Washington, for the US, it's happening in the fifth house of pleasure, enjoyment, adventure. So this is a feisty one. I know you were saying, we were talking earlier, Erin, and we were mentioning how the interesting thing about this new moon is that it has this, can you see the screen okay?
Yes, I can. Just to reiterate that sometimes I get screwed up to the full moon.
Oh,
The
did I
full moon.
say new moon? I keep, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's Gemini season. I'm all over the place.
That's right. That's right. The
Oh,
T
thank you.
square.
Full moon. Yeah, and it's making this T square, not by degree, but certainly the moon, not by degree, but certainly by sign with Saturn. And there's a whole big, really cool story there about what courage to face fears, of what comes up for you when you see this full moon. And then we can talk about Tina and how Tina played into this, or however you want to roll with it.
Sure. Well, the obvious thing that comes up for me when I look at this full moon in Sag in the Northern Hemisphere is we're getting ready to come into summer too. And many of us have had a really burgeoning springtime with all of this Taurus energy. Everything is just growing, growing, growing. And there's been a lot of overwhelm, sort of like spring on steroids. And then we have all of the planets in Taurus that are still giving us green and energy and all of that. So it's building, building, building. And then we have this huge full moon in Sagittarius coming along, which harkens to things like travel, international and foreign affairs, culture, international culture, also reading, summer reading, which is another great way to spend our time. And also, I think for me, it brings up faith. It brings up faith. Sagittarius brings up faith and truth seeking. And when we look back at that chart that you pulled up, what stands out to me is this. It's a wide T square, but it is a T square. It's what I think with Saturn. It's about 6 degrees away, but it's a wide T square, Saturn and Pisces. So with this Saturn and Pisces right now, I feel like we've been discussing, there is a cleaning out of old belief systems that
Mhm.
have passed their sell-by date. And when I see Saturn involved here, I see a maturation. Saturn is always calling for us to grow. You know, Saturn traditionally in Renaissance astrology was associated with death and the Sith and the cutting away the wheat from the chaff. So when we look at death, that's just another word for change. But when Saturn comes along, and he's to me, Saturn is very powerful in this chart because he's he's at the degree, within 1 degree of where he will be stationing for
Yep.
retrograde on
Yeah.
June 17th,
Yeah.
which is going to be at 7 degrees something minutes. So he's building and he's slowing down. He's getting ready to say, hey, this is the point that I want to make. And when we look at the Sabian symbol, the mystical symbol for 8 degrees Pisces, which we always want to round up to
Right.
the next degree, I thought it was interesting that it's a girl blowing a bugle. So it's a calling. There is a calling. And that also dovetails in with Sagittarius energy full on. So
Yeah.
Saturn is asking us to grow up and to mature and to do some work to bring our spiritual Pisces energies up to date to who we are today, not maybe something that we were practicing in our 20s or 30s or even, you know, however old we were. It's like, who are you today? What is there's a sobriety aspect to it with Saturn, a sobering up, taking stock. And then Saturn always asks us to do a little bit of footwork around that. Sometimes very hard footwork. We can look at where he's landing in our particular charts, wherever Pisces is at in our charts. And that's what I always suggest to folks is look where Saturn is at. And I think you would also agree. Look where Saturn is at, because there's nothing clearer than that 2.5 year time period, some cases 3 years time period, to where we can roll up our sleeves and do the work. And the good part about it is that it's not like a no guarantee like Pluto or Neptune going on. There is almost like a karmic teacher reward, like a brownie point at the end of the day. If we do our Saturn work, he always leaves us a gift. He always
Yes.
leaves us a gift.
Think of the like a carousel with like grabbing the ring on the carousel, but it's not brass, it's probably gold, or Saturn is something even more, but extremely valuable, but it requires us reaching and doing that work. It's not going to be handed. The brass ring or the ring on the carousel is never handed to us, right? We have to reach for it. We have to go into those uncomfortable spaces.
Yes, and with this full moon in Sag, these are the themes, about faith and what are we putting our hopes in. We're talking a little bit about Tina Turner today, and one of her most famous songs, which has a story in itself, is River Deep Mountain High. So that is very Sagittarius. So where are you putting your faith? Where are you shooting your arrows in life? And the thing that I love about Sagittarius energy is that it's unstoppable. It's absolutely unstoppable.
Yeah.
The spirit will go where it needs to go. It will give you strength to climb Mount Everest. But we
Yeah.
just have to listen. We have to heed the call. Sagittarius is about the vision and the vision quest and really going for it. So is there
Right.
anything else that you would like to say about this?
I love that. Well said. Let me pull that chart up again. Let's see what, oops, I get that to share the screen.
And I also want to bring up, while you're pulling that up, Erliana, is about 2 quotes that we've talked about before that are perfect for this energy, including the Gemini sun. The Gemini sun is involved here, so there's a lot of communication and words and spoken and written and performed and things like that. And then the Sagittarius full moon squaring Saturn and Pisces, we're talking about this updating of belief systems and looking at them more realistically or more maturely. So this phrase that I really love is courage, which is all about Sag. Courage, and of course Leo and other fire signs. Courage is fear that has said its prayers. I think that really sums up this wide T-square right now.
I
And
love
that
that. Courage
That
is
quote was
fear.
by Dorothy Bernard. She was a 1920s silent film actress from South Africa, but I think that the quote was made popular by Anne Lamott, the writer.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's out there and it's like, yeah, I love that. Courage is fear that has said its prayers. How eloquent and how inspiring. I love that. Here, let me pull up this chart again. So yeah, here we are. This is for the chart of Washington, D.C., but of course, adjusted for your own, into your own chart where you find Sag ruling, wherever Sag is in your house, that's where the full moon, wherever Sag is in your chart is where the full moon is happening. I think too, this, of course, Sag is nowhere near and it won't be there for another couple of years, Neptune, but it is co-present with Neptune in the sign of Pisces. So they're all that also, and even with Sag and Pisces about to go retrograde, it speaks to me, sacrifice, like the sacrifice that we make, but it's not like a sacrifice like bummer, even though, the ego can feel it. It feels like a bummer, like a death and a restriction and a challenge, but it's a sacrifice. It's almost like a noble sacrifice, or it's something that you bear and you do it because you love, and it comes from that Piscean, that devotion. But of course I will make this sacrifice, or of course I will put myself on the line and be uncomfortable because there is this devotion that drives it. Does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm.
I can think of the
Mm-hmm.
bhakti, like bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion, and Sag in New York, the moon in Sag, this new full moon, what an orchestra there. And then Jupiter being the ruler of this full moon, Jupiter is in its, look at this, conjunct, then by the time the full moon occurs, it'll have just passed that exact conjunction with the North Node. But that's an important thing too, the Jupiter conjunct the North Node, the ruler
Mm-hmm.
of this full moon. So yeah.
Right. So we're bringing in a lot of higher mind, Sagittarius rules the ninth house, higher mind philosophy. I also, when I think of this Saturn activity here and the fear that we talked about overcoming, that can be overcome or faced with Sagittarius energy, with our spiritual lives and our philosophies. Fear is really about the fear of change here, the fear of change. And there's another great quote that I love, which is by the artist Georgia O'Keeffe.
Mm.
She's actually a Scorpio, but she said this great Sagittarius flavored thing that I love. It's one of my favorite quotes. I've been absolutely terrified most every day of my life, and I've never let it stop me from doing exactly what I want. Exactly what I want. I've
Mm.
been utterly terrified most every day of my life, and I've never let it stop me from doing exactly what I want. So if we embrace change and we embrace what life is asking for us, we can move from fear into action.
And we don't have to worry about, oh my God, I shouldn't be feeling this way. I should be able to move forward and it should be perfect. It's like, no, that's life. Like you're going to be afraid, and it's okay to be afraid, and just do it anyway. Like they would say that, have the fear
Yes,
and do it anyway.
that's
And
right.
act in
Yeah.
place of. And it's interesting too, Erin, I'm noticing here too, let me pull up I love that, my little marker pen. Here's the sun in Gemini's house, sun in Mercury's domain. And where's Mercury? What's Mercury up to? Well, he's conjunct Uranus, heading into an exact conjunction in the days after the full moon. So there's this, wow, to me, that can be like the openness and the willingness to, when I see that, I'm thinking about healing trauma, and maybe stories that we've had about about trauma, and the courage to heal that. I think that's part of it, the courage to face their fears. Part of this conversation could be about people having past trauma and the ability to heal this.
And that's a really good point. And I think that might be a great segue into our discussion and honoring of the
Tina,
great Miss Tina Turner.
yeah,
Yes,
I'm going to pull up her chart. You want me to pull up her chart?
sure. And that tipped me off, because guess what? She was experiencing her Uranus return
Right,
when she
right,
passed. She
yeah.
has Uranus in Taurus. and you were talking about trauma.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And Tina Turner, obviously, if we look here at the chart, we see in honoring her on this full moon in Sag, she was a Sag. She had Mercury in Sagittarius. She
Hmm.
had Venus in Sagittarius. And she had the moon in Gemini, plus that fabulous Leo rising. I mean, who could forget her
The
early,
hair,
early 80s lion's mane, right?
right? The
Yeah.
wild mane.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many of our viewers have read her autobiography or watched documentaries about Tina Turner, but most of us do know something about her overcoming great odds, being born into poverty and also being abandoned by her parents. And then she was in a domestically violent relationship with Ike Turner. And she fought with every ounce of her being to get
Mm.
out of that situation where she was essentially held hostage.
Hmm.
And to me, she utilized the darkness or the shadow aspect of her life, of her early upbringing and her very dark marriage, to put that energy into her singing and to her performance and sheer energy. Yeah, go ahead.
I remember that was a wonderful movie that she was nominated for an Oscar, Angela Bassett, the What's Love Got to Do with It? And it was the story of her
Yes.
life. Remember, I was back in the, I want to say the 90s
Yeah.
or so, but I can still remember she apparently there was a lot of debt that she took on and she had to pay it back, even though he was the one that caused all this. She went to this, like the dingiest little clubs, that she had to just start from the very bottom and work her way up and pay that debt off. And you talk about sheer determination and optimism and like, I have faith that I'm going to do this. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I remember
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. And it's fun to think too about the body parts that Sagittarius rules.
The
So there we
thighs
the thighs and
and
the hips and the quads.
the
And what
quads.
is Tina Turner known for?
Those
Those
fabulous
legs.
legs, right? Those sexy, strong, toned legs.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. And the
very
other
right.
thing that really fits into this Sagittarian energy is when I think she was actually suicidal when she was in her darkest hour, and she found Buddhism
Right.
and she became a devoted Buddhist. And also another Sagittarius aspect of it is that she ended up moving to Switzerland. Sagittarius takes us often to foreign lands.
Right.
So
And very spiritually, I mean, living in the Alps, you can't get more spiritually supportive than that unless you're in India or someplace in Nepal. But yeah,
exactly.
I
Yeah.
love
So
that.
I think her song really represents this full moon in Sag. It's quite operatic and filled with Jupiterian generosity of spirit, this river deep, mountain high. So I think that one fits it more than What's Love Got to Do with It at this particular moment.
Right, exactly. That definitely speaks to her legacy. I'll put the link to that below. River Deep, Mountain
Mhm.
High. It is. I think the critics have said it was like one of the best songs that she's ever. It's really almost like her signature piece. But you're right. It does, and it speaks to her chart and her life. And it's so timely that we're talking about this with the full moon in Sag because it's bringing up these themes, and isn't it beautiful, this divinity that it permeates all existence, with the fact that she left the planet during this time. And I think that's
Mm.
definitely a little wink for all of us, to this legacy and how we can embody this and use what she went through and see her example and as encouragement for ourselves to keep opening ourselves to that optimism, that unbridled optimism and faith and confidence.
Right. And one last bit that I wanted to mention about Tina too is the Gemini moon that she has, and the Sag sun and all of the other Sag there. This is all mutable energy, and that's what we're bringing in here. And that mutability, yes, it can be sometimes it can be ungrounded, or where's the tenacity or stick-to-itiveness of the fixed signs, for example. But that malleability can really help us get through some tough spots in our life. So this full moon is also a reminder to be flexible
Yeah, we don't have to break from the pressure. We can.
and to change, to be willing to change. For example, in this song River Deep Mountain High, that was a change in her career, because she had been doing more of the Ike and Tina Turner review sort of thing, and with this new producer of Phil Spector coming on the scene, and they pushed her out to use her entire embodiment, that snarl voice, that rock and roll. And I think I would also just, I have to mention that I think rock and roll is very Sagittarius.
Right. Yeah. It's out there. It's big.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Hedonism and glory, celebration of appetites.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Sagittarius represents appetites in all ways.
With that lust for life.
Yes, Jupiter.
Jupiter.
Right.
You know what I wanted to, and if I can just mention about this, I love reading this book. I feel like, if you feel you want to travel and you might not have the means to or the ability to right now, maybe you're a mom at home with kids or something. This book is so great. Your stories. I mean, that's another reason why I had you on. Is like, my goodness. I mean, the tenacity it takes. You went where you sold everything. You talk about. I mean, I think about faith. I mean, I know that I have a lot of faith, but then I read things like that. Like, I know I got hung up on is at one point you even sold your car. You talk about making a commitment to a divine for your path. Your oh my goodness, what was that like?
Well, everything has to go if we really want the truth. Everything symbolically or sometimes physically needs to go in the proverbial spiritual fire if we really want to find out what we're made of. So I actually did it twice. The first trip I went to India, I gave up a big career and my great apartment in San Francisco, and I went to India for 6 months. I came back, and I'm not the only one that has this sort of story, but the second time I did it, I also gave up everything, but that time I bought a one-way ticket because I was determined
Whoa.
to go all the way. And what I mean by that is sort of like this climbing Mount Everest, is in a way be willing to die in order to receive full freedom. Truly, freedom is another Sagittarius word.
And with Saturn now in this at the stationary retrograde point, talk about sacrifice and death for that call. Yeah, it's an initiation. It's like taking it. And I guess with this Saturn squaring this full moon, it's really calling us, and it is at that retrograde point. It's wow, what kind of what awaits us if we're willing to really, really fully let go, and the good things that can occur from that, but facing one's fears with courage.
Absolutely. And I even kind of wrote about that in the preface that of the sequel, Bindi Girl 2, which is the sequel to Bindi Girl 1.
Bindi Girl 1.
They can be read in any order because they're short chapters and tales. But in the preface, I talk about how in my mid-30s, I essentially wanted to pull a woman's version of Thoreau's Walden Pond experiment. And the real reason for that, I mean, it wasn't really about being a nature lover. I was drawn to India for many, many reasons, spiritual, cultural, you name it. But I was determined to be in a place far enough away from my birthplace, the United States, for a long enough period of time so that I could be stripped down of all those belief systems that we talked about, the Saturn in Piscean belief systems. I wanted to understand what I truly felt and thought about things. Now, I know that we're never entirely free. We still carry our genes and our conditioning with us. There's still newspapers. I'm still meeting foreigners, Westerners on the road. But living out of a backpack essentially for 4 or 5 years gave me the opportunity to examine things that I grew up with politically, things that I grew up with regard to spirituality and religion, all the Western thought, and really come to terms with who I was, like a little turtle with a shell on her back to see what it was that I was made of. And I think that does take, I have 5 planets in Sagittarius and a Gemini moon. So it's
Yeah, the
perfect.
real reason why I had you on.
It's all the
Let's
Sag,
call it an
exactly.
expert. We have to call
Exactly.
it an expert.
So I don't, obviously, not everybody has to go to such extremes to find their truth or to live their truth. And yet I will say that even if we don't have to do that, there probably needs to be a willingness somewhere in there to do that,
Give it all up and do
to
it.
be
Yeah.
free, to be truly free, and
Yeah.
not just live, what is that phrase? The life of quiet desperation.
Right. Yeah. Most men lead lives. What did he say? Most men lead lives of quiet desperation. Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
this full moon is saying, no, no, doesn't have to be that way. What happens if you let go of that fear and all the conditioning too? And I think about Saturn and Pisces, this conditioning that's been deep in our culture that we're not aware of, or we are, but then it just gets really clear to us. And then the choice that we can make out of that clarity, out of that revealing, it's like, okay, I know what I need to do here. I know what changes I need to make to the foundation of what my reality is, my reality structure. Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
I think that covers it. Is there anything
yeah.
else that you see in this full moon or that comes up
Um,
for you at this time?
no, I think we've pretty much covered it. It's always exciting when and we have Gemini season, the sun's still in Gemini until the 20 something 22nd. And so Mercury conjunct Uranus, exactly conjunct. So there could be some light bulb inspirations and like a sudden change of thought and ideas and things that just kind of come out of nowhere, like these. That's something to be very exciting and liberating. So that's something definitely to look forward to in the days following this full moon. So I'm excited. I'm definitely keep journaling and see what
Yes,
that looks
exactly. All of the good Gemini things, right?
like.
Including podcasts, making podcasts, listening to podcasts, writing,
Reading, chatting with
speaking.
others,
Yes,
speaking,
your
connecting.
neighbors, your siblings.
Siblings, neighbors, right? In-laws, right? This could be a very
Mhm.
interesting full moon for,
Have a barbecue,
right? Have a barbecue,
make friends.
make friends, right? Make new friends, be bold.
Exactly,
Yeah, make
exactly.
things that
And
are outside
that
your comfort
that
zone.
that is, I will say, and I know we're going to wrap up, but in the introduction of this book, I have a chapter that kind of paints a picture of my childhood, which was very Sagittarian. That's also a little bit like the hippie days, where you're getting the wild and the woolly characters. And Sagittarius is asking us to be open to people that don't look like us or that eat different things or talk a certain way or have totally different value systems. And I think when we keep an open mind, that Saturn and Pisces is cutting through all the calcified belief systems, we can
Right?
have a much better time no matter what's going on around us.
I love
It can
that.
be a lot more fun. Sag loves to have fun.
Right. Yeah, let's clear away. I love that calcium, right? Or crystalline. Saturn can speak to crystallized patterns of
Yes.
beliefs that are just Pisces. They're false. It's like there's some delusion going on that we get to untangle in this journey with Saturn. Starts that retrograde 4 or 5 months. It'll be retrograde. So yeah, this is an interesting time to launch and move into
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I like that.
And to really think for
Undoing it.
ourselves is like that little symbol I would like to keep for myself too, of that girl blowing the bugle, of the Sabian symbol of Saturn turning retrograde at 8 degrees Pisces. What is the bugle that we are hearing? What is that calling? We can't ignore it.
Right. I love that. The little bugle, the bugle girl.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a good visual to take with us on this journey. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. This has been really exciting. I'm
Thank
so
you.
excited that we were able to finally reconnect. And I know I've got more questions to ask you about love, loss, liberation, and things. So you will don't go too far.
Okay.
And yeah, appreciate your time. And if people need to reach you, it's substack.com, Erin Reese, and I'll put the link below. And they can you have one. I loved when you were in India. I loved all the things you said. They were really fantastic. I just feel like when I read your books, I feel like I'm right there. They're so photographic, that the imagery, the richness in the imagery really jumps off the page. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all of your service to astrology and for awakening of consciousness, for all those who are lucky to find your podcast. Thank you very much.
All right. Sounds good.
Namaste, Erliana.
Namaste, Erin. Namaste,
Thank
everybody.
you, everybody. Thank you.
We'll see you soon. StarSound Speaks, StarSoundastrology.com. Thank you all for listening. Bye for now.